the Extinction Agenda, comics of the 80s, 90s, and more.
All right, so welcome back to the Extinction Agenda, episode 7. Today we're going to be talking about Astonishing X-Men, number 1 through 6, which I guess was published. Those issues were published between 2004 2005. Joss Whedon, John Cassady, and then we're going to move on to a little bit of general culture, an episode of Millennium. But we'll talk more about that later.
Chosen by you. And Joss Whedon's X-Men, a little bit outside of the 90s into and beyond.
Yeah, we're going to do a lot of and beyond, because, I don't know, that's just what we're going to do. Especially if we're going to talk about X-Men regularly, we can't just do 80s, because that's all Claremont. It's Claremont, Lobdell, Necessia. Yeah, that's a slog, so we don't, that's some of that stuff's pretty good, but we can't just stay there.
No, definitely.
Yeah. So Gifted, we both read Gifted in the past. I had some good memories of it. How did you feel this time around?
I remember the book because it was odd that Joss Whedon got to write X-Men, so it was a moment, I think, that I remember specifically going to pick this up. The biggest thing right off the cuff, the art is on point.
Mm-hmm.
Cassady is excellent. And then they had kind of like a weird start, like an offbeat start with the Kitty Pryde Fragmented Memories.
Yeah, he immediately, I guess we'll focus on Josh as a person later. Just, like where he's coming from and what is sort of his milieu or whatever is. But, immediately it's a real trip down memory lane, it's just like I never left. Oh, and here's all my memories. And it's just such this immediate nostalgia trip. And I guess you can tell by the sound of my voice that I'm a little down on that.
Oh, yeah, you didn't like that.
Yeah.
Also, I noticed something. That basically the intro to that comic was like the same as Harry Potter, only with Emma Frost as Dumbledore.
Okay, because sorry, I don't know those things as well as you.
Well, it just they opened it up.
Yeah.
He's like a kid out of place going back to school,
right?
And the way that they established the teachers and stuff, it was just like a sorting hat. Only
right.
Randomly
I think they even make reference to it.
Do they?
I think Beast makes a Hogwarts reference. So maybe, yeah. Joss, he's 5 steps ahead of you, man. He knows what he's doing.
By stealing the entrance and then making a stupid comment to out that he did it. I don't know, man.
Well, maybe that's Joss's bag, and this is maybe something we can talk about. But I don't want to jump into it right away.
Okay.
So I don't know. I guess have you ever watched anything else by Joss Whedon other than the Avengers movie? Have you ever seen any of his TV stuff?
Yes, unfortunately, I believe I have.
Oh, really? Have you watched some Buffy?
Yes.
Oh, cool. I've never seen any of it. I've never seen any Buffy.
I also watched
or Firefly.
The other guy, Angel.
Okay.
And I also have watched Firefly.
Wow. All right. Great. Okay. So you've got a good full belly of Joss.
Oh yeah, real.
Kind of know his habits.
I could give birth to him.
Oh no. So yeah. Yeah, it's all self-referential comedy. I mean, Buffy is, from what I gather, from what I've sort of gleaned at a distance, it's all about, here's a genre expectation. Let's act as if we're aware of genre expectations, and then and somehow subvert it. Even the basic character of Buffy, the Vampire Slayer, is the teenage blonde, what's normally associated with a cheerleader. Suddenly she's the heroic individual. And yeah, anyway, and you see that throughout Gifted, that habit.
Well, I think his writing too is like generally when he writes for TV, it's in a comedic fashion. So he's I don't know. I think he's always trying to flush out dialogue that's kind of a witty back and forth. And that's kind of just, I don't know. That's his thing. That's his thing on TV anyway.
And he's good at it. No, this is a charming book. I guess cards on the table. I think this is a very charming book that ought to be destroyed. It was very harmful to the X-Men. I blame this book for Deadly Genesis. I think. Okay, so yeah, we might as well just jump. I might as well jump into it now. So the end of Grant. This is the comic that comes after Grant Morrison's run. And Grant Morrison's run ends with, it's this notion of the Jean Grey. She's in the future. The future's been. They refer to it as a rogue bacterial colony or something like that, which is infected this whole universe, and she's got to amplify the future. And so basically, the question is, do you let the X-Men die, or do you reboot it yet again? Do you continue yet again and give life to something that ought to die? And of course, she chooses yes at the time. She chooses Scott and Emma to get together.
Right.
And then this book is meant to be the immediate aftermath of that. But I'm not so sure that the rogue bacterial colony was actually eradicated. I think that all the difficulties that plagued the X-Men prior to Morrison's run are simply picked up again in this story and then amplified and given a nostalgic sheen, which remember the X-Men, and then we're going back to basics, but not. I don't. Anyway, I'm concerned about what this book means.
Wow, I did not read that deeply into it.
Well,
really,
I think a lot about.
Really felt like a Die Hard story almost.
Well, yeah, you're right. And then okay. So, what is the story? What's the rundown here?
No, there's a pervy bad guy. His name's Ord of the Breakworld.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, the basic story is the X-Men are trying to be a school.
Yes,
someone really
and a non-violent school specifically. Actually.
Right. Where they'll still teach self-defense and whatnot, obviously. But, and then someone invents a cure for being a mutant, and then it's the X-Men investigate. They discover Ord is behind it all.
Well, standard geneticist first off, Yes.
No. Yeah.
I'm on TV. I made the cure for mutants. Oh shit! All hell breaks loose. Yeah, it turns out to be a weird alien. He beats the shit out of them, which was weird. Also.
Yes. Yeah. No. Not great. And then Colossus is resurrected.
They found him in the basement of a fuck. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know what? I liked this, and I made a lot of notes. And talking about it now, it's actually pretty stupid.
Yeah, it's not great. But so I like it a lot. I like things about it a lot. Because again, I said it's charming, and it's charming for exactly the reasons we always sort of established, which is Joss. He's a charming writer. It has comedy. Yeah, you laugh at the back and forth conversations. There was a Kitty Pryde Colossus moment, I think, when she discovered him in the sub basement of Ord's lair, and I can't remember what he said, but it was like a really clever little back and forth with a little joke. I think I even snickered to myself, which is pretty rare, really, when you're reading a comic book. I find to actually laugh. That's odd. So his dialogue, if anything, I mean, you didn't feel like it was a badly written story. No, not at all. I think its chief flaw, other than its existence, is the costume design. I want to lay this actually at the feet of John Cassady, who is really great artist. He draws facial expressions and action extremely well, but Ord looked really dumb, and Beast's costume is not great. I just think when he's left to design something whole cloth, you get Ord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was bad. Ord looked like a Kermit the Frog.
With like a metal band around his mouth.
Yeah, like with like basically like a hairband that had fallen down over his nose.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what Cassaday's, that's what creativity means for him, so.
That's what he thinks a fucking
Yep.
A-level bad guy is. Okay.
Oh yeah, no, and I guess that's, and then, yeah, you're right, because then he goes and takes the X-Men apart, and you feel wronged.
Slighted. Yeah.
He's slighted. Because
in all fairness, the X-Men weren't a whole unit when they took him on, and I don't believe they were prepared. Because it shows that it wasn't terribly difficult to defeat Ord in the end. I think they just maybe got caught a half a step off.
Yeah, and and that happens in every superhero story. The first encounter is a little step off, and then they rally, especially in an X-Men story, where part of their, I don't want to say appeal, but I mean like sort of story habits is they get beat up first. They're always taking their licks, but then they manage to survive, get a small victory, move on.
Like Rocky.
Like Rocky. No, they don't win. They don't win a championship. That's the thing. No, actually, no. That's a good, because they never win a championship. It's always a skirmish that they've won. Yeah, I don't have an alternate analogy, but Rocky's not going to cut it.
Nah, that's okay.
Yeah. Oh well.
It's also established once again that Cyclops is being manipulated by a psychic in Emma Frost.
Do you think that's actually what happens with him?
Yeah, because
like even with Jean Grey?
I found that he made an error. There was like a moment when his team lead is questionable, that he makes a decision and everyone's like, "Whoa, what?" And Kitty Pryde seems to side eye Emma, and I think there's they didn't outright say anything like that, but I think there was like a hint of it, or that there was like at least some little manipulation being done.
Oh, I think you misremember that scene because Kitty, after everybody leaves, Cyclops looks at Emma and he's like, that they think that you're manipulating me, right?
Yeah, but I like that's the same sort of cheesy writing that Joss does.
I think in that instance it works really well, and it shows a self-awareness to Cyclops, and also kind of a playfulness that is really missing from the character a lot of the time. He seems genuinely happy with Emma. Yeah,
he seems different.
Yeah.
And that's a weird thing to be able to write, I guess, also.
Yeah, no, that's it. And Cassady's art helps sell that very well, because he can sell characters expressing emotions.
Physical expressions too, body language and stuff. He's quite the artist.
Yeah, he's got the good graphic chops. There's a lot of good fight scenes. Putting aside the Ord fight scene, which that's not great. A lot of X-Men on X-Men action here.
Yeah, Wolverine and Beast have a fight.
Yeah.
I think there's the cheesy intro to Wolverine too, where Cyclops shoots him out of his bedroom.
Yeah.
Which was actually a favorite.
Yeah. No, that was awesome. And that was like, and again, it's super charming, because that's exactly what you would want Wolverine to do after Jean Grey. Because this is immediately after Jean Grey's death and Cyclops' adultery and all that stuff. And, a lot of, you want to see some closure on that, or at least some comment on it.
Yeah, and you would think the person ideally to step up to the plate and do that would be
old Logan. Yeah. So, it starts off with Cyclops Wolverine fight, which is pretty cool. I like that Wolverine's that Cyclops isn't scared. He throws the first punch essentially.
He didn't even hesitate.
Yeah, which is probably a good move. And I guess he knows that Wolverine's going to survive it. So what the fuck?
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you throw hard. right? It's
Yeah. So he's got an adamantium skeleton, healing factor. He'll go flying. Organs will be ruptured. It'll be terribly painful.
He'll get up and really want to fight.
Yeah. And anyway, that was a nice little moment. But I like that Wolverine Beast fight was maybe the first time I've ever seen anyone give Beast proper chops.
Yeah, he Beast, I feel like, wins his fair share of fights in other books, but you like the fact that he can like fight on that level, I don't think is ever really like explored enough, and you need to use sometimes characters you're more familiar with to showcase that, which was cool.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense given his experience. Like he's one of the original X-Men. He was a member of the Avengers. Like Beast in many ways is sort of an unsung A-list hero. Well, let's say B-list, but he's still up there.
and he is a senior member of the X-Men. He's been training the whole time tactically with them. He's smarter than all of them.
Yeah, and he's just been in a million fights, just like all of them. But anyway, it was just nice to see him get his moment, like just on the superheroics level.
Yeah, and then they played the old, I feel like this was actually one big thing from the X-Men cartoon, the Beast wanting to get rid of his beastness,
It's one of those cross-pollination things. So it starts with the comics, it goes to the animated series, and then it comes back to the comics.
Yeah.
Which is, that's kind of an interesting interplay.
And well, he's the only character really on the roster that actually has an unfortunate look and can't go out in public. Not the only one, excuse me, but maybe one of the worst ones.
It's one of the few.
Yeah.
Like him and Nightcrawler, and I guess Angel to a lesser extent, but he can somehow conceal his wings.
Well,
you'd have to fucking look like Quasimodo to do that, but whatever.
I don't know. I guess you could make some weird excuse for the Apocalypse wings, but then he was blue.
Yeah, well, he didn't try to hide it at that point.
That might as well not bother.
Yeah, that's true. You're blue. So yeah, but the X-Men are generally very pretty, and this is something that's been sort of commented on. Well, the Claremont commented on it early with the Morlocks. All the sort of deformed individuals who society rejects violently end up living in the sewer. And so the X-Men, they're the pretty ones. They're the ones who can pass, and they do, except for not for Beast, and even he wants to be able to pass.
Yeah, so, and I mean, you can't blame him, really, if you were in that situation.
Well, especially in the situation where you're facing the possibility of totalitarian genocide, which is really on the table for these guys. It's not like there hasn't been legislation, etc., in the past, and visions of dark futures, and I'd want to be fucking normal. Go home and drink a beer. Fuck this shit.
Yeah, that'd be awful.
Yeah. A lot of sex in the book?
Yeah. A lot of Colossus in the book.
I kind of wish there in the next story, whatever it is, I guess Kitty and Colossus, get down to fucking. But the way Joss portrays it is really funny because the kids are in the living room and they're sitting on the couch and I guess they're watching a movie, like one of the mutant student kids. Okay. And then all of a sudden behind them, Kitty and Colossus fall through into the ground as if they've both phased suddenly through the ceiling. And then she's like, "Oh, that's never happened before." And then they giggle together as they run back upstairs. And that's cute. Yeah, that's cute. And then if you're an adult, like if you're sexually experienced, you're going to understand that joke. Otherwise, it's still kind of funny, but it's not, it's a little
kind
wink,
of just
wink.
Glazes over. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's nice to see that and I think that's another thing that adds to the charm of this book. The majority of superhero comics or comics generally are very sexless. and we like our drama to have sex in it.
I mean, now you do anyway. Back then, there was a sort of a different standard for it, I guess.
Yeah, well, you couldn't be as an avert. I mean, yeah, Claremont would code it, or he would have allusions to it,
right, yeah.
But but even in this, it's just like Emma and Cyclops are talking. She says something about in the morning. Smash cut to the next morning where they're laying in bed together.
Right.
But they're tangled in the sheets or whatever. It's communicated what happened.
Yeah, it's more overt.
Mm. Yeah. So anyway, that's nice to see. I kind of wish that would stick around as a thing. It's cool when a story's sexy or when it has elements like that.
Probably more a Joss Whedon thing than a lot of other writers.
Definitely is. Yeah. No, it absolutely is. I don't know. He reminds me. I think it's because he was on TV so much, but he reminds me more of a playwright. Like he's writing these comedic, sexy, jaunty adventures. Like it's got kind of a old world stage kind of thing going on.
If we ever get far enough along in this and there's actually a Buffy fan, he's going to be like, this guy should watch Buffy.
Yeah, no, and I put Buffy on the list of potential general culture subjects. One day we're gonna have to watch Buffy. Because it's 1997 to 2003, so that falls into our mandate. And
that's right.
I've never seen it. Maybe I'll watch it. Maybe I'll fall in love. Oh, Joss!
The witty banter.
Yeah.
I'll leave your side.
Yeah.
I see you're skeptical, but I mean, I think if you like writing like that, just all over anything he does.
Yeah, no, I bet it's charming. I do believe that it has its charms. And I've seen it on the periphery. Like I've seen bits of episodes, just because I come into a room, someone's watching it, something like that. And yeah, it seems fine. It doesn't seem like bad television. It just doesn't. It's never struck me as something for me.
Well, I mean, it was
maybe I'm wrong.
Super low budget, also, so that's kind of its own thing.
I'm a Doctor Who fan, man. Low budget has never kept me away from the table.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
true.
So it's not the production or anything. It's just the I don't know, the pedestrianness of it. Or maybe it's just the smarmy self-awareness of it. I know maybe that's contradictory because I'm smarmy and self-aware, but I don't know. He's never been someone that I've been particularly, even though I found this story very charming and I found his other stories very charming. But then when I think, do I like this guy? I always come out with a no.
Well, you're like, sometimes there's a difference between somebody being skilled and you actually liking what they're doing.
Yeah, there's just not that click. Like I don't get excited. Afterwards. I'm not. Yeah.
You can appreciate that he's not a poor writer, that this isn't a disaster of a story, but it's just maybe just missing something for you. That's all.
Yeah. I'm going to say that I think I'm going to place a lot of that on Ord as well. So it's not just Cassady that makes Ord suck.
Is it because he got spanked by Colossus?
I'm glad he did. It's just like the whole. It's the whole thing, like, because I remember what his motivation is.
Right.
Which is, he's from some world where Colossus is gonna, it just seems like a strange choice for a X-Men story.
Yeah, his what do you call it? His overall kind of agenda and motivation seems a little weak. This level of evil. Yeah.
He's essentially came to Earth and managed to, working with a geneticist, set up a systematic genocide.
Right. When he could have just killed Colossus, I think he had him imprisoned already anyway.
I think, I think there's some ambiguity about who is the threat. there shouldn't be because I don't know. My memory of the rest of the story is pretty fuzzy. Either way, you're right though. He could have just killed the fucking X-Men if that was the problem.
Yeah, he had ample resources. I think to at least kill the majority of them.
Mm-hmm. But then he looks ridiculous, and then he's also like, his backstory is that he's the winner of a giant gladiatorial tournament. So, he's just, nothing fits. Like, he doesn't seem intelligent. He doesn't seem particularly cunning. He doesn't look particularly menacing. And he gets a really embarrassing moment in this first story, which is one of the comedic moments. When he goes to break into the X-Men's mansion with the cure, and he's gonna sneak attack them, and then he can't find them, and he's talking to the children in the hall.
Yeah, that's right. They made like that's one of Joss Whedon's kind of failure things is like, unless you're looking for a complete comedy story, you shouldn't go to him because he'll even make your bad guys hokey and funny. Which you almost found Ord kind of like funny and likable in that scene, and not to mention he didn't even kill anyone.
Yeah, well, he
like
obviously violated
them.
That. Yeah.
Oh yeah, whatever. That was so he like fake cured his mutant power, like.
No, it's a permanent cure, isn't it? Like it's a permanent.
Oh yeah,
erasure
it was
of power.
established as a permanent cure, which is also bizarre because that seems to me eventually would get into the wrong hands and wipe out all the mutants. So,
well, and this is one of the reasons I see this comic as the beginning of that's the first step towards Deadly Genesis. There's immediately, like, Grant Morrison had already killed all the people in Genosha. He'd already done this thing that got rid of a bunch of mutants, and the whole idea now was to maybe like grow. But in this, like, we return immediately to questions of depopulation fear. And it just sort of, I never would have thought of that unless we had read Deadly Genesis and thought about House of M and all that stuff. But this is the theme immediately emerging.
I think the same story could have been told with a twist that it wasn't a legitimate cure. It was a temporary cure, which would have scrapped like leaning on the depopulation thing. But also you still would have been able to tell the story. I don't know if that's cheap or not, but that's probably the road I would have gone with so that I'm not completely making a mess of things. I don't know.
Yeah, especially like, I don't like the idea of a cure for being a mutant. Because it one, what do I want to? It implies a whole bunch of things. I know this is meant to be like the X-Men get their power from genetics and something, but the idea that you could create this serum that would fundamentally alter your genetic structure.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it's mutations, like a genetic flaw or a genetic oddity, right? So you can't be cured of that. It would be unless you had like some type of like, I don't know, like nanovirus that would manipulate your genetic structure, which to have that work on any different mutation just sounds stupid.
Yeah, and you don't want to science it up too much, but I mean, and this gets kind of, I think you kind of touched on it inadvertently. The X-Men sometimes can be thought of, within the frame of like disability studies. I'm not, specifically when you're thinking about the Morlocks or something like that, you're thinking about individuals who perhaps in some way are disabled by their mutant gift. And that's why you get so many people lined up, looking for this cure. But to have a cure for this is basically, it's a formula for or de-enchanting your universe, because it's something that takes away magic. Putting aside the disability studies thing, but yeah. So I don't like it for its political connotations, and I don't like it for its sort of narrative connotations. you shouldn't be able to just like nullify permanently the magic of your magical universe.
Yeah, that'd be like if there was somebody taking away powers in Harry Potter. If nobody had magic powers, it'd be stupid.
Yeah. Well, it would just be, I don't know, just be nothing. And then, but we've seen it with Claremont. I mean, I guess this is a very Claremont thing. Wipeout, it's right. A tried and true sort of.
Yeah.
And then there's been characters
the thing is that his ability to keep people's powers away and stuff like that, he actually ended up using my technique where it ended up being kind of cheap and temporary. When it was thought to be permanent, which then I guess maybe Joss didn't want to take that road then.
Yeah. Both of us might be not remembering the later outcome of this story. Maybe there is something like that. I really don't remember. But either way, I think it's just
the end of the story was such a shitscapade that you kind of forgot about a lot of the stuff.
Well, because there's 3 other trades past this, and I think the 4th one deals finally with Ord again, if I remember correctly.
I just mean like the actual ending of this particular book, also with Nick Fury storming in, and then Ord like with a rocket ship escape, like out of an Austin Powers movie. I don't know. And then the fastball special.
Yeah, which I thought was when they did the fastball special, they didn't name it. They said, ready to do that thing or something like that, and then there's the 2-page spread, and they don't even name it. But it's a fucking, for their X-Men fan, it's a fist pumping moment.
It is, yeah. Actually, all the Colossus moments were fist pumping because there's someone had a deep love of Colossus.
Yeah. And it kind of ties back into the nostalgia of and this is the other theme that this story I think bequeaths to Deadly Genesis, is a nostalgia explicitly for the 1975-1976 era. To have Colossus around, and particularly like the sort of the good-natured artist in love with Kitty Pryde, which was early Colossus Kitty Pryde relationship. So
that was like the introduction of Colossus. I don't know any of that, a lot of that Colossus stuff.
Oh, right. Well, we haven't read any of Kitty Pryde, like, when she's remembering and that she turns around and she points, Professor X is a jerk. Like that happens very early on in Kitty's run, if I remember correctly. And that's the era that this is hearkening back to, because her and Colossus were a thing back then.
Right. And I found the art felt almost like he wanted to take it a little bit more 70s style, maybe.
For sure.
It felt old.
Yeah.
Like or that it was maybe supposed to be like an older story,
but it still has modern elements that we've already touched on, which is like,
yeah, definitely. I just feel like the art itself maybe almost felt like a little retro style, like on purpose. Just I don't know.
Yeah,
it was like a fun thing they were doing.
Yeah, no, and not an accident. They're both aiming for that, because that's, that this was the big, it was the next big thing. But typical with corporate superhero comics, the next big thing is like, hey, remember how things used to be?
Well, I mean, that's how you do it, right? And especially with comic book fans.
Well, with the superhero fan community, I've been thinking more about, especially now that we're on Twitter, etc. I've just been thinking more about comics and fandom as community, and I was thinking that one of the reasons that this book doesn't speak to me as much is because this book is designed to help build a community. It's friendly, it's funny, it's sexy. You've got your simple heroics, and it's something that everybody can just like come around together and enjoy the self-referentiality of it. Because I bet this is extremely popular. This run is extremely popular with what you might call like your typical X-Men fan nowadays. I bet this is very well thought of.
Well, I wouldn't see one. I mean, it was like we've already done like a handful of X books, and this one's particularly good, even among the ones we read so far.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's for whatever reason. I mean, I can see how it could, sit in the classics, even though you don't like the weird continuity things they did.
Yeah, but I think it's specifically because it's set up to be memeable. It celebrates itself. It celebrates itself as a thing that one reads and enjoys and harkens back to. I'm not saying it's calculated, but I think that's part of Whedon's popularity. It's what contributes, and why his Avengers movies are so charming. Because he's celebrating the Avengers as a concept.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can see that. Also, I have to touch on something. I'm always there for my man Cyclops. He is fatally shot and still comes up with an absolute sick strategy to beat some like battle bot guys.
Oh, right. Yeah. And then he has that hallucination. And this gets back to, I was kind of thinking about that. I didn't think a lot about that hallucination, but, Jean shows up and, how does my costume look? And it's like an amalgamation of all his old costumes and looks really stupid. And I guess that gets back to that self-referentiality that Whedon's interested in and likes to explore.
Or Whedon told Cassady to come up with it himself, and that's what happened.
Yeah, well, either way. Anyway, yeah, and then they and that's a moment where the X-Men, like on the one hand, it's silly that they got punked by battle robot guys, like really generic, boring, do nothing battle robot guys, and then
did
but then it's cool how they beat. Well, yeah, the X-Men have fought a couple minigun wielding robots in the past. Like this should be old hat. And they but again they take their licks and then they come back.
Thanks to Scott,
yeah,
you mean? Yeah.
Thanks to Scott. Yeah. It's a good plan. And then he comes back and he psychically communicates with everyone. And it's kind of cool that Wolverine was just waiting. Like, I'll just hang out here until Scott comes up with a plan.
Yeah, that was actually cool because you really got the sense that, he's the leader and that at some point or another, his idea is going to be better than anyone else's.
Yeah, and here's a moment of growth, because if you think back to Claremont's depiction of Wolverine, like he's constantly a loose cannon, constantly ignoring Cyclops' orders. You don't see that in this story. You see a genuine sort of respect, even though he's hurt by him and Emma being together.
And you still got your scrappy moment at the your scrappy moment of defiance in the beginning of the book, but then moved on to like a more mature outlook of the team, kind of.
Yeah, they're a team. They're all working together. The loose cannon in this story is Beast.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because he wants that weird cure, and he has a weird relationship with the evil geneticist lady. So. Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know what I wanted to say about that. I guess another thing, and this is not a bad thing at all, but there's just one of the things Whedon brings to the table is an emphasis upon diversity of appearance. The geneticist is, I gather, Hindu. She's racialized, but she's she may be the villain, and maybe that's problematic, but whatever.
I don't think so, because I think she was very humanized in the story. I didn't find she was the villain. I found that she had an agenda that was directly related to her life's work, and then she had that there was a little mutant that had a horrific backstory that really justified her means to get the mutant like sickness as she believed it was cured. And she sees her tortured friend Hank all the time, and really, I mean, I thought she was humanized to the point where she didn't come off as any type of really villain at the end.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, that's good to see then. But you know, and a lot of it ends up being on the feet of Ord anyway. All of that sort of gets displaced. You know, 'cause she did dissect bodies, and there was, but you know, but she's absolved of the responsibility of
That was
Colossus
a dead
in the basement.
That was a dead body.
Yeah. Okay, that's true. But she is perhaps willfully ignorant of the origin of all this, the resources which suddenly were handed over to her, and specifically, you know, like the torture of Colossus in the spaceship, the underground spaceship. Because she's clearly associated with some sort of
unseen amount of time.
Yeah, and like the people she must be hanging out with must be like just awful, racist, bigot, monster people. Because I mean, like, they're paramilitary serving under. You know, go on.
Yeah, no, you're right. You got me here. But
and I hadn't thought about it that much until now. I've just,
my initial kind of inkling on the whole thing, though, was that on account of this being like an outlet for her entire life's work,
right?
That she just is trying to latch onto it, maybe blindly, because it justifies everything she's ever done. Really feels like it could go down like a Nobel Peace Prize route, maybe in her own mind, you know.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. Like I do see what you're saying. She is given a very human motivation. You know, she's the individual who witnessed domestic violence and then wants to come up with a cure for domestic violence, something like that, and then goes to dark ends in order to do it. And that's maybe very typical in fiction. So anyway, nice. I was just nice to see representation.
Do you want to know what I didn't like?
No. I mean, yes.
The overall racial representation in the book. Okay. I don't. You know what? I don't like to see white Nick Fury.
Interesting.
Yep. At first I was shocked. You know.
Right.
When they did it in the Ultimates.
Yeah. And
then.
Now you can't have it any other way.
No, Sam Jackson is my Nick Fury.
Right.
I can't even imagine him being a human being anymore outside of that. He's just like a character. He's a character that just doesn't exist.
That's really interesting because I never made that leap. I never stopped. I know I'm not shocked by it, you know, but I was just, you know, they're very separate people to me, and I guess at the end of the day, I don't think this is a racial thing at all, but I do still prefer white Nick Fury. You know, I prefer that version of the character to Samuel Jackson's. But and it's not even Samuel. I guess it is Samuel Jackson's. It's interesting how Miller did that. Like the way that Mark Millar, you know, they drew him like Samuel Jackson, and then they just made it happen like a magic wish. It's weird.
I don't believe it. I feel like that's fairly rare to illustrate someone like the actor you'd like them to play in a movie that would probably never get made about your comic book.
Yeah, and they could have
and
never
then
known,
just
you know?
Have that happen.
Yeah,
just because it looked awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, hey.
Yeah. So
now
that's
everyone
really interesting.
tries to do that, though.
Yeah, probably. A lot of people have a
did you see the new Punisher?
No, I mean the TV show.
No, the comic books. Check out any new issues of Punisher, and you'll see that someone's pushing the art toward the cover art, at least toward a Dolph Lundgren old man reboot Punisher.
Interesting. There's a movie we have to watch. There's definitely a general cultural moment for us.
Wow. Yeah. But, you know what actually is a good one on that? I think there is someone that has the whole thing on YouTube.
Well, that's good.
Uncut.
Perfect. Director's cut. Is there anything else about this book that sort of stands out to you?
No, I don't think so. I think that pretty well fleshes it out.
Yeah, that was just strange. Like there was 6 issues, and I don't feel there's 6 issues worth of things to talk about. And maybe that's another thing.
Okay, it's part of that. I'm gonna cut you off.
Okay,
Part
I'm
of that
tired of this shit.
was because of the art was great. And I think because the sequential art in the action scenes was so good, there was a lot of storytelling being done without dialogue. So it moved fairly quickly because of all the action. But that's what I think anyway. But
No, and you might be right. And I think that when this was coming out, it was the beginning of the post-Warren Ellis shift over to trade paperback. Like you write your single issues with the trade paperback ultimately in mind.
like your six.
And yeah, and they referred to it as decompression. You would give the story space to breathe. But as a consequence, and I felt this a lot at the time, a lot of the comics I was reading were you just pissed through them, and you wondered what the fuck you were doing. And I wonder if this is suffering from a little bit of that. Because like I do agree with you. I totally agree with what you said. The art does do a lot of work, but I'm just wondering if they still could have fit more.
Yeah, and actually, you know what? Funny you say that. I read an issue of Conan the Barbarian. It's very recent by Jason
Okay.
Aaron.
Yep.
And I can't remember which number it is. I'll get back to you on that. But it's around issue 9. It's a pirate ship story about a ship that basically zombifies the corpses on it.
Okay.
And any animals that come in contact with them. And anyway, really neat little story. It was self-contained in the one book, which is very rare now. I feel like in comic books, and it was well done. It was front to back, and it was a really cool story. And I don't know, and not that you want to go back to that, but it is nice to see once in a while.
Yeah, and that's fair, the one-offs, but it doesn't play well in serialized fiction, like you do have to tease, next week the villain's going to be revealed, something like that. But I don't think Whedon, getting back to that though, Whedon doesn't do any one-off stories in his entire 24 issue run, and that's a long time, anyway.
Well, he had he had a script in mind for X amount of time, and I mean he's the type of guy that writes a serialized continuity for television. So, I mean, if I'm going to write he basically wrote us a season of something, right?
Yeah, maybe 2. Yeah, and you definitely see his TV habits in there, which maybe is where Warren Ellis and the rest of the people picked it up. They did start speaking of seasons. Ed Brubaker at this time, working with writing Sleeper over at Wildstorm, they was explicitly called season 1, season 2. So there was, television they were looking for ways to repackage the same old stuff and new ways of telling stories about the same old stuff. So,
well, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what you do. It's neither good nor bad. That's what they were looking for. Enter Joss Whedon.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. I think it's a charming story. I think it's troublesome for the future.
And we'll maybe read some of those future books and find out why it was troublesome for the future.
Yeah, I hope I'm wrong.
No, you're probably right. So you suggested we watch a television program from an old TV series called Millennium.
Yeah, I did. I've often, so this episode, season 2, episode 21, if I remember correctly, somehow Satan got behind me.
And also, for the record, a very good example of how to tell a fun standalone story in the middle of a season, but keep your character in for continuity. Boom.
You're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is probably the textbook way to do it. written and directed by Darin Morgan, who is one of the most beloved writers of the X-Files, apparently. He did 3 X-Files stories, I think it was, and then one for Millennium, and then wrote some for the new issues or the new seasons that were released. So anyway, very well thought of in that Chris Carter universe space.
Right. And the Millennium, I just actually found a box set of it at my local Sunrise Records.
Okay.
So all 3 seasons, super overpriced, but I looked at it and seriously considered getting it because of this episode.
Oh, that would be a mistake, because it's not very good. Do not do that.
Okay, noted.
Yeah, this episode is really a gem, and it's stuck with me since it first aired, which I guess was in 1998 or something like that. I watched it, and I Cynthia and I, we reference the censor. This is unacceptable.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it's become a household joke for us. So it's it's very something I always wanted to talk about.
I could not get Kate to watch it.
Oh no, huh?
However, I watched it at work, and many people at work took interest.
Right. Was it on like a proper TV, or what did you do?
No, I watched it on an iPad.
Okay.
Yep. Right in the lunchroom.
Right.
And, I got some interest.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. So clearly this is a beloved sort of thing for me. And you sound like you liked it, but what did you think of it?
Well, okay, the opening was great with that dick face paperboy guy or whatever.
Oh,
and
the
then
old fella,
basically
yeah.
The Satan get together, the demonic, the spirits, the devils or whatever.
Yeah.
Demons collecting souls for hell, I guess.
Yeah.
So they pose as old men, and they open up harassing that kid in the coffee store, and the kid literally pisses in his coffee.
Yeah.
Which I found hilarious, and then I also liked that they enjoyed that he pissed in his coffee.
Yeah, and they cut to credits.
And then they they basically share their stories about how they get souls, and they open up with the serial killer one, which was hilarious. Somehow they made a serial killer seem hilarious. Just butchering prostitutes on the road with this old man spirit talking to him, basically.
Yeah.
And then when he went to prison, and he advised him to hang himself with his underwear.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just really funny. Yeah, man. This is a funny episode.
I laughed at when he was vomiting outside of the car, and laughed when he tried to kill himself with his underwear, and then was killed by this pervert guy later on anyway.
Yeah, Johnny May Potter, the very man whose high score he was trying to overcome. And then
strangled him with his underwear.
And he's looking at his just like that's hilarious. It was very much it harkened back to Tales from the Crypt in its moralizing. It's a bunch of little stories within a story. It's 4 stories within a larger narrative frame of the old men / devils in a coffee shop, just sort of talking about their lives and work, in a very sort of human way. It's interesting.
Back in the serial killer story too, really enjoyed the Satanist death.
Satan, save me! They hung on it for a good long time, just enough for you to start to think it was funny.
Yeah, and then they'd clip back to the old man watching him. It was funny.
And then they're laughing in the coffee shop. I bet no one answered that.
Yeah, he gave it the old college try. I was laughing. Yeah. And then the best one, I know you're going to already know which one I thought was the best one.
I'm not quite sure. What's the best one?
I think the best one is the next story, which was the fat guy.
The cold calls, right?
He just goes to do his normal job and live his life, and it's so fucking depressing to work for 2/3 of your day and then go home, be exhausted, watch TV, go to bed, and go back to work. And then in between, he spends mundane time doing shitty things like going to his garbage laundromat that was reoccurring.
Yeah, and he goes to the strip club and
do it. And then eventually jumps out of the fucking window. And then I thought, wow, I can really see where that guy's coming from.
Yeah, and this is another one of those moments where like the episode isn't just funny, it's poignant, because he shows that same fella, like he's going over all the various ways in which we torture ourselves: alarm clocks, exercise, shaving, going to work, and he shows the fat guy in the booth, I guess, because he sells gasoline in the middle of the night, and he's just smashing his head against the glass, but even like in a dead sort of way. Desperate for stimulation. And
clearly not every single person goes to the strip bar as frequently as this fat guy, or has that horrible of a life. But you do. Any normal person has done the majority of mundane tasks that this guy has to do in a day, and that's the funny part. Is that you realize like it is kind of a bummer to drone through certain things.
Yeah, and then he's like in the devil talking about he doesn't influence souls directly, he just creates irritations in life.
It just lets life be. What does he say? Life has been drained of all its enchantment.
Yeah, I wrote that down too. And so he just creates irritations in a world, in a disenchanted world, and and then he quotes, "Until they realize that their lives are unfit to live," and then he just drives them to suicide. And then there was the, I don't know. Okay, then after that, there's the censorship story at Ant Network,
where the guy's a psycho. Broadcast standards and practices.
Yeah, this story is based on the writer's experience on X-Files. He had a fight with he had a fight with the censor over the word crap, and they made him cut it. So this is his revenge.
It's really good.
Yeah.
And then he terrorizes the guy with the dancing baby devil. It was fantastic.
Yeah, which is again another reference to, but this time to Ally McBeal. She saw like that dancing baby, but it wasn't all devilish. You remember the dancing baby of early internet fame, I imagine.
Oh yes, I do.
Yeah. So anyway, the dancing baby. This one, was just kind of a funny story about him driving a standards and practice guy insane,
which was particularly easy.
Yeah. And then showing, and then obviously at the end ribbing Fox yet again, because they take the footage of him shooting up an X-Files set and transform it into "When Humans Attack."
That's really funny. I didn't pick up any of that.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. I don't really have anything to say about it though, other than like censorship is dumb, and I'm glad they made fun of it.
And then the little bits of the lead, Lance Hendrickson, seeing these guys work, somehow just... I guess there's nothing he could do about it, so why would he try?
Yeah, because one of his... so you've never watched Millennium, but it's a serial killer. It starts off as a serial killer story where Frank Black, the main character, he's able to sort of see into the minds of serial killers and that sort of thing. It's, it's something like that. But there's also sort of a supernatural element that emerges later. And he just has special vision. He has all this sight. So that's why he's able to see these guys.
Right.
Yeah.
And what'd you make of the reoccurring laundromat scene?
Yeah, over at the Toby/Sally story, the last devil telling his story. Basically, it's he's a washed out old devil, doesn't feel he can tempt souls anymore, and he falls into a relationship with a stripper.
That was also awful, old. By the way.
What? That she's
the old stripper scene?
Right. that was very uncomfortable for you.
That was a lot to take in.
Yeah. But so they fall in love, and it kind of at that point it becomes the inverse of the second story of the fat guy in the who doesn't feel that his life is worth living because his life is disenchanted, and in this they fall in love and they enchant each other's lives, and then even the most mundane thing becomes magical for them. So it's very like Christian redeeming, love is the redeemer, that sort of thing.
Not only until the end when they pulled the twist.
I don't know. And see, I sort of puzzled over whether or not the twist. So the twist is that he was just doing it to get her to commit suicide, because in the end, he rejects her.
Right.
But I don't know if he's a reliable narrator, because like when I see the actor portraying the scene of him crying, and he's sad, when he's sad, like he's genuinely sad in the coffee shop. But he says that he's elated, that he's happy. But it seems otherwise. It's kind of, you don't know who to believe or what to believe in that.
Oh, yeah, that he almost just did it out of like a guttural reaction and then just sort of regretted it. Yeah,
that's possible. You just get the sense of regret that it happened, rather than like he was just going through the motions. And one of the things... Oh, go on.
He wasn't bragging about taking her soul. It was an event, that was sad.
Yeah, and he's hesitant to tell the story because it's, he says it's tawdry and personal. So he seems like even later on in the coffee shop, the devil seems particularly broken up by this act of damnation. And it reminded me of sort of medieval definitions of what it meant to be evil. Evil was something, it was a lack of goodness rather than a thing in and of itself. And as a devil, he sort of has to reject love and goodness and forgiveness and all that shit, because that's not what they do. They lack those things. They're just cantankerous old men who tell dirty stories to one another in a coffee shop.
The donut hole, actually.
The donut hole, that's right. I like to look at what people describe or name things in television shows when they can't use Dunkin' Donuts or Fox News.
It's actually a pretty good name.
Yeah, I bet it must exist. There must be a million donut holes in the world. But it has hole in it, like a pit. Yeah, don't want to think too much.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
Yeah. But then Frank Black sees them and he says, "You must be so lonely."
Yes.
And so it's a good, the stories that inside the story comment on the framing of the story. So there's a lot going on. It's a good bit of television.
Yeah, I don't know. I really liked it. I thought it went it was a great front to back. I liked that it was a closed story, which I always like. Yeah. Yeah,
I thought it would be safe to dump it on you because you don't need to know anything about Millennium to watch this story. It may as well not have been a Millennium episode, except that Lance Henriksen was in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was self-contained. I was happy. I was surprised. Also, the aesthetic, the makeup on the demons, and it was really unique. It was shocking to watch.
And it was at the initial reveal, because it just shows them as old men, and then all of a sudden he reaches for a donut, or a coffee or something, and then, they're just grotesque. Yeah, we should really comment on that. Yeah, well, I guess we are right now, but it's very shocking every time you see them.
And then immediately you're trying to put together, wait, these guys were just bitchy old men a second ago. Wait a sec, and then it really you're not told that they're a group of old sort of retired, exhausted demons that are collecting souls. That's just you have to pick that up as you go, kind of
Yeah. And I actually, and one of the things that makes this smart is that it doesn't condescend. It assumes that your audience is going to just catch up. You know, you give some interesting stories. People love stories. You know, they'll figure it out from the story.
Right, exactly. But it just gives you that. It gives you enough to, and you, because it doesn't condescend, you get to have the shock.
Yeah, yeah, which is great. I would like it. I like fiction that doesn't speak down. You know, I like to be lost. A lot of people don't like to be lost. And I don't mean that, you know, because they're dumb or anything. It's just it's not an aesthetic quality that they enjoy. They like to go from A to Z, and to be step by step along the way. And you know, that's cool.
And that's fair. It's okay to tell stories both ways. But
yeah,
every once in a while, it's nice to spin you on your head.
Keep going.
More surprises.
Oh yeah, big surprise. Huge surprise.
All right, so next week we're going to be doing House of X and Powers of X.
Right.
You know, 1 through 6 and 1 through 6.
Coming right into the future, into the right now.
Yeah, because anyway, it's a big event, and it's a very exciting comic, and can't wait to talk about it. But we're also going to do something else, and I'm going to roll my D4. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Oh no, D4. 4. Classics Corner.
Oh, the Classics Corner, eh? Okay. You got me here. The Classics Corner. I have a couple of choices in here, but I wasn't super duper ready. I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna go with a big one.
Okay.
Is that okay with you?
No, that's fine. Yeah.
Batman Year One.
Oh shit. All right. You just
Too big?
Okay. Well, no, I'm gonna. You can't keep picking Frank Miller.
Oh, I'm gonna pause me on. Okay, I'm gonna say.
Well, you can.
Secondary choice. My secondary choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Couple issues of the first Punisher War Journal.
These aren't classics.
This is a classic. This is a classic. God damn it.
Beloved classic, Punisher War Journal, issue 2. Remember that one, guys?
We're gonna have to look this up, but it appears
okay,
as though
whatever we're doing,
written by
Batman
Carl. Some of it was written by Carl Potts. Okay.
So, oh shit, I got some of those Carl Potts issues. We're just gonna do Batman Year 1.
Okay.
Because it's an actual classic.
It is an actual classic, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a hard time with this. I got to rewrite some stuff for Classics Corner, apparently.
Yeah, you might want to, just read a book. Yeah, whatever. I'm not editing any of that out. That fucking stays.
No, leave it in there hot.
Okay. Yeah.
Batman
So anyway, Batman Year, that's going to be an interesting follow-up to Hawks and Pox.
Also, you need to get off you need to get off Frank Miller's dick. Jeez, really hard on the poor guy.
I'm not hard on the poor guy at all. We've done 7 episodes and we've talked about Frank in 4 of them.
Yeah, he's gonna plague us, man. Yeah,
Frank. Yeah, I'm just Frank casts. I'll make a new category if you want. We could just.
Now, all we need is a little energon and a lot of luck.